If you grew up in the 1990s, this video might feel uncomfortably familiar. You remember a time when life felt slower, yet somehow heavier. A time when you were taught to be independent early, but no one taught you how to talk about your emotions. A time when you learned to survive quietly. And if you're watching this right now, there's a good chance you've wondered why you feel nostalgic, emotionally strong, yet deeply tired in ways you can't always explain. This is not random. Psychology shows that the decade you grew up in shapes the way you think, love, trust, struggle, and cope for the rest of your life. And people who grew up in the 1990s developed a very specific psychological pattern that most people today don't fully understand. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you might finally understand yourself in a way you never have before. Before we go deeper, if you enjoy calm, meaningful psychology content like this, take a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps silent psychology reach people who feel exactly the way you do but don't have the words for it yet. Now, let's continue. People who grew up in the 1990s lived in a rare psychological middle ground. You experienced life before constant internet, but you also adapted to the digital world later. This made you mentally flexible but emotionally conflicted. As a child, boredom existed. Silence existed. You learned how to sit with your thoughts because there was no endless scrolling to distract you. But you were also exposed to rapid change early on, which trained your brain to stay alert, adaptable, and slightly anxious at the same time. Many 90s kids grew up with less emotional validation. Parents were often busy, stressed, or emotionally unavailable. Not because they didn't care, but because that generation was taught to survive, not to express. So you learned early that emotions were something you handled alone. Crying was done privately. Problems were solved internally. Asking for help felt uncomfortable. Over time, this shaped a personality that looks strong on the outside but carries a quiet emotional weight inside. This is why many people from the 90s are extremely self-reliant. You don't like depending on others. You struggle to ask for support, even when you need it. You're the person who listens, helps, fixes, and stays calm during chaos. But when it's your turn to be vulnerable, you often minimize your own pain. Psychology calls this emotional self-containment, and it becomes a lifelong habit. Another defining trait is nostalgia, but not just the warm, happy kind. It's a bittersweet nostalgia. When 90s kids think about the past, there's comfort mixed with sadness. Old music feels deeper. Old memories feel safer. Not because life was perfect, but because it felt more real, more human, less rushed. This nostalgia isn't about the past itself. It's about the emotional safety you felt when expectations were simpler and the world felt smaller. People who grew up in this era often struggle with modern life in a unique way. You can function in fast systems, but your nervous system still craves slowness. You answer messages quickly, but you miss long conversations. You adapt to technology, but you feel overwhelmed by constant noise. This internal conflict creates mental fatigue that's hard to explain to others. Emotionally, 90s kids tend to love deeply but cautiously. You value loyalty, consistency, and effort. But you also fear abandonment more than you admit, because emotional security wasn't always guaranteed growing up. You learned to stay alert in relationships. You read between the lines. You notice changes in tone. You sense distance before words are spoken. This makes you emotionally intelligent, but it also makes it hard to relax. Many people from this generation are overthinkers. Your mind doesn't shut off easily. You replay conversations. You analyze choices. You question whether you did enough, said enough, were enough. This isn't because you're weak. It's because you were raised to be responsible early. Responsibility became tied to your self-worth. Another psychological pattern common in 90s kids is delayed self-care. You take care of others first. You push through exhaustion. You normalize stress. You tell yourself, you'll rest later. But later rarely comes. This creates burnout that builds quietly over years, not months. Despite this, 90s kids are resilient. You survive emotional silence. You adapted to change. You learned how to stand on your own feet. You may feel tired, but you are not fragile. Your strength just doesn't look loud. It looks like endurance. It looks like quiet perseverance. It looks like showing up even when you feel empty. There's also a deep sense of empathy in people who grew up during this time. You're sensitive to moods. You understand pain without explanation. Because you learned to observe instead of express, you became emotionally perceptive. You often feel things before others say them. This is why many 90s kids feel emotionally older than their age. However, this empathy comes with emotional exhaustion. You absorb energy easily. Crowds drain you. Shallow conversations bore you. You crave depth, meaning, and real connection. And when you don't find it, you retreat inward. As adults, many people from this generation feel stuck between who they were taught to be and who they truly are. You were taught to be practical, stable, and responsible. But inside, there's a creative, emotional, expressive self that never fully had space. This inner conflict creates a quiet dissatisfaction that's hard to label. If this resonates with you, you are not broken. You're responding normally to an abnormal emotional upbringing. Awareness is the first step toward healing. Learning to rest without guilt. Learning to ask for help without shame. Learning to express without apologizing. Near the end of this video, I want to ask you something important. If you grew up in the 1990s, what part of this felt the most real to you? Let me know in the comments. Your words might help someone else feel less alone. And if you think this video might resonate with someone you care about, share it with them. Sometimes understanding is the best gift we can give. And if you're still here, thank you. Silent psychology exists for people like you. Quiet thinkers. Deep feelers. Survivors of a softer, slower world, who are learning how to live in a louder one.